At 4:17 a.m., on the misty banks of Russia's Tata River, silence hung like a warning no one could hear. Then, out of that silence, Ukrainian scouts uncovered something chilling. 30 chain anti-tank mines, wired and ready to erase an entire bridge. On the surface, it looked like just another hidden trap. But what followed next would rewrite the rules of modern warfare. This wasn't just a battle for a bridge. It was a contest of brains versus brute force, of technology versus tradition. And in the dark, quiet hours before dawn, Ukraine would prove that sometimes the deadliest weapon is not firepower, but strategy. That bridge wasn't random. It was a lifeline of a 10-mile supply artery, pumping fuel and ammunition straight into Russian frontline units. The Russians thought they had built the perfect kill zone. Heavy machine guns at both ends, electronic jammers hidden in the tree-line, and explosives wired to detonate remotely. To them, the bridge wasn't just defended. It was invincible. But invincible is a dangerous word in war. As the world slept, Ukrainian drones began painting the battlefield with invisible eyes. Thermal scans revealed every mine, every nest, every jammer truck. A deadly puzzle slowly unfolded. 30 mines, 20 feet apart. Gun crews switching shifts every 15 minutes. Gaps so small, they looked meaningless. Until Ukraine realized those gaps were the cracks in Russia's armor. From the southern bank, a tiny ground robot inched forward, not to destroy, but to reshape the battlefield itself. It planted shaped charges under the bridge, amplifying what Russia thought was their trap into something even deadlier. Meanwhile, in the woods, Ukraine lit up their electronic warfare systems, jamming Russian radars and communications across the entire valley. In seconds, the defenders weren't hunters anymore. They were blind. At 4:41 a.m., a decoy drone skimmed treetops to the east. Loud, obvious, and designed to be seen. Russian gunners took the bait instantly. MG, 3 machine guns lit up the foggy sky. Jammers screamed with white noise. To them, this was it, an attack on their bridge. But while every eye and weapon turned east, the Rayal strike came from south. Just 3 feet above the waterline, a vampire drone skimmed silently across the river. Carbon frame, quiet propellers, and strapped beneath it, a plastic explosive warhead. Invisible, undetectable, deadly. The static cloud Russia created to defend themselves became the perfect tunnel, shielding the drone as it glided beneath the steel trusses. At 4:43 a.m., the drone kissed metal. 1 mine triggered, then another, then 30. In just 2.7 seconds, the bridge erupted in a chain of fireballs. A fireball taller than a 15-story building tore into the night sky. Steel beams ripped apart like paper. Concrete slabs weighing 50 tons were launched into the riverbed. Russian sentries were thrown into the air like rag dolls. What they thought was a fortress became a tomb. But the explosion wasn't just destruction. It was transformation. In that instant, Ukraine didn't just destroy a bridge. They collapsed the supply chain. They shattered Russian coordination. And they sent a clear message. The battlefield is no longer just about weapons. It's about timing, deception, and turning the enemy's strength into weakness. Before we continue deeper into this extraordinary operation, a quick reminder. If you find value in uncovering these hidden stories of modern warfare, make sure to subscribe and join us. It takes only a second, but it ensures you don't miss the tactics, the technology, and the truth-shaping conflict today. Now, let's return to the battle, because what came next was even more devastating. Exactly 4 minutes later, the silence broke again. This time, not from a drone, but from thunder. Hidden in the tree-line 1.5 miles away, Ukrainian Caesar self-propelled howitzers roared to life. Their shells screamed across the valley, smashing into Russian fuel depots and ammunition trucks. Each impact sent secondary explosions ripping through supply points. Flames turned the fog into a burning orange haze. At the same moment, 2 Ukrainian T-84 tanks pushed forward, not a storm, but a shield. Behind them, armored boats cut across the river, infantry packed inside. Covered by the smoke, they landed silently on the far bank. Above them, snipers picked off Russian machine gun crews, still dazed by the blast. This was no reckless charge. It was a symphony of firepower. Artillery shaping the battlefield, armor shielding infantry, snipers keeping defenders blind. And in the distance, the final hammer dropped. From 7 miles back, a HIMARS rocket lifted into the sky. Its target, a logistics warehouse beyond the river. 45 seconds later, the building erupted, splitting in half, shells cooking off inside like fireworks. The Russians weren't just outgunned. They were outmaneuvered. But even as fire consumed the riverbanks and convoys scattered in chaos, Ukraine wasn't finished. Because in modern warfare, destruction is only the beginning. The true weapon is what comes next. Stay with us. Because in the next chapter, we'll uncover how Ukraine turned one destroyed bridge into a 48-hour campaign that paralyzed an entire sector of the Russian front. When the Tata River Bridge collapsed in fire and steel, Russia thought it was a temporary setback. They were wrong. What Ukraine launched in those early hours was not a single strike. It was the opening move of a carefully scripted 48-hour campaign. A campaign that would turn one explosion into a ripple effect across the entire front. In Moscow's playbook, bridges can be rebuilt, convoys rerouted, supplies restored. But here's the problem. War isn't fought on paper. As smoke curled from the shattered bridge, Russian commanders scrambled. A drone launched to regain visibility, but never made it. Ukraine's newly deployed Iris-T air defense fired once, and the Orlan drone burst midair before transmitting data. Russian eyes were blinded before it could even open. Next, Moscow rerouted convoys through a secondary road near Sevsk, 60 miles away. But the terrain wasn't built for war. Mud-choked country roads, weak bridges, and narrow passages slowed them to a crawl. Worse, they didn't know Ukraine had already seeded that route with remote-planted mines. The lead armored vehicle hit one dead-on. The explosion flipped it sideways, blocking the rest of the column. Infantry scattered in panic. Supply lines froze in place. Ukraine didn't stop there. To make matters worse for Russia, 2 naval drones slipped downstream, broadcasting fake engine vibrations and sonar pings. Russian monitors thought enemy boats were approaching and diverted surveillance. By the time they realized it was a phantom signal, their forces on land were already cut off. In less than 2 hours, Russia's entire resupply system in the Bryansk sector had collapsed. What began as a single destroyed bridge had now fractured an entire front. By 6:10 a.m., Russian attempts to retake control had disintegrated. Some units were pinned at the block detour. Others were lost in confusion downstream. And the rest were retreating. Ukraine had prepared for this exact moment. With artillery still thundering and drones circling above, they hammered stranded convoys. HIMARS precision strikes cut off warehouses. Sniper teams locked down survivors trying to regroup. It wasn't chaos by accident. It was chaos by design. And here's the staggering part. The Tata River Bridge wasn't even a major crossing by global standards. But for this sector, it was a jugular vein. Once cut, the lifeline bled out fast. Russian artillery on the northern fire line went silent within 48 hours, starved of ammunition. Convoys were forced onto fragile rural bridges that could barely handle 20 tons, let alone 44,000-pound trucks. Supplies dribbled instead of flowed, and every mile became a hunting ground for Ukrainian drones. This wasn't just a battle. It was a demonstration. A $3,800 drone had triggered Russia's own minefield to obliterate a bridge that cost months to fortify. That single move forced 6 weeks of logistical paralysis along the Bryansk-Moscow corridor. Let that sink in. 6 weeks, created in under 6 seconds. But perhaps the most striking part wasn't the destruction. It was a restraint. Ukraine had the chance to wipe out retreating convoys completely. They didn't. No fire on medics. No targeting of wounded. Instead, footage showed Ukrainian soldiers carrying injured Russian troops onto stretchers. This wasn't just warfare. It was warfare with discipline. A statement to allies and enemies that Ukraine's fight isn't about revenge. It's about survival, strategy, and principle. So what does this all mean? The Tata River strike showed the world that the future of warfare isn't about who has the biggest guns or the most tanks. It's about who can think faster, adapt smarter, and turn the enemy's weapons against them. Russia built a kill zone. Ukraine flipped it into a trap of their own. And in that flip, they expose the truth. In modern war, the side that controls information and timing controls the battlefield itself. If you made it this far, you know this isn't just another war story. It's a lesson in how conflict is changing before our eyes. So take a moment to hit subscribe, drop a comment with your thoughts, and share this video with someone who still believes war is only about tanks and missiles. Because what you're seeing here is history being rewritten in real time. From a single strike at 4:17 a.m., Ukraine didn't just destroy a bridge. They cracked open a front, exposed Russia's weak points, and redefined how drones, deception, and precision warfare can topple brute force. The Tata River will be repaired. Convoys will roll again. But the message cannot be patched. No supply line, no command post, no fortress is truly safe anymore. Because in today's wars, the deadliest explosions don't just happen on the battlefield. They happen in the enemy's confidence. And that Ukraine just shattered. So, the next time you hear about another silent drone skimming just above the water, remember this. Sometimes the quietest machines make the loudest statements.